Hello, welcome to Sportscast Podcast. This week we'll be looking at every level of English football, an update into the Rugby Union World Cup, little bit of cricket and boxing, but we're going to start with an update on USA versus Europe in the Ryder Cup.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Good. Recovered from a week of COVID hell, which should have been the prime opportunity to watch plenty of sports. However, I've had to work.
Have you caught much then? That's the main thing. Apart from COVID, have you caught much in terms of sport?
I've got a few bits of football, couple not much Rugby World Cup, I'll be honest. But then obviously the Ryder Cup's been on, which has I've seen little bits and bobs of. I'm sure you have watched probably most of it.
Yeah, I've watched most of everything, I'm afraid.
Do you want to start with the Ryder Cup?
Yeah, a very. Let's go back to Friday. Let's start there. A very good opening. So the format, obviously, they do foursome in the morning, 4-ball in the afternoon. Same again Saturday, singles on a Sunday. They were 4-0 up after the foursomes, and then they won the 4-ball 2.5, 1.5. So the half is when they're tied after 18 holes. Finished 6.5 to 1.5. USA actually failed to win a match. So their 1.5 came off 3 tied games.
Yeah.
Saturday finished 10.5, 5.5. So it was a 5-point game going into the Sunday, which is the most. Well, no teams ever came back from 5. That you had the miracle of Medina a few years ago, where Europe came back from 4. But they started brightly today, but then at one point, the final 6 games was all USA, and looked very precarious. In all honesty, it looked like they were going to come back and they were going to, Victor Hovland won the first point of the day, kind of thing, and Europe only need to get to 14.5, but it went a bit iffy. There were sort of 3 or 4 games before the end where USA was leading and Europe looked in a bit of trouble, but I think things started to come through properly. And then we did see a European win with Tommy Fleetwood sinking what would be the not the final, but the winning putt, because there were still games going on. So Europe won 16.5 to 11.5, which they got battered last time out. So, home advantage always plays a massive part. But, quite convincingly in the end. Good sort of show back on the for the USA to come back into it, but thankfully, Europe came out winners.
It was fantastic, and it's the atmosphere. I know it's obviously a home advantage, but the atmosphere on both sides was great. I know it's not kind of the same atmosphere as the Lev where we're throwing pints about, but the banter and the chants and the atmosphere and just the general. It's like every 2 years the Ryder Cup, isn't it? It's like a homecoming event, really. Although it was 3 years since the last COVID one, but whatever.
It is brilliant. It's nice to see. It is nice to see. There's been a little bit go on off the course. Well, it started on the course, but then came off the course. Have you seen Rory McIlroy's?
Rory McIlroy with a caddy in the car park or something daft.
So it started on one of the greens. So Patrick Cantley's caddy apparently in celebration walked across Rory's line when he was eyeing up a putt, and then he kept almost like taking his hat off his head, and basically they're not paid to be at the Ryder Cup, these players. So Patrick Cantley wasn't wearing a hat. Apparently it was in not protest, but because he's not being paid, he's not being told what to do, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was just a bit of a piss take, and then Rory sort of like says it and walks over to his ball, and the caddy sort of carries it on, and I think something was then said in the car park, and that's where it did get a little bit leery, and Shane Lowry had to step in and separate them. But I don't know how far it had gone, but seemed a bit of a piss take, in all honesty.
Just piss in the wind.
Yeah, but all good for European, and I think Rory played well. Tommy Fleetwood's been good this year. Matt Fitzpatrick's been good. Victor Hovland's probably been, for me, the player of the season. John Rahm, he's been there or thereabouts. So it's been it was a very strong European team. Big weekend of football. I say big weekend of football. It's an interesting week of football. Liverpool have sold a small stake of their club. So you've got, I think it's Fenway Park Service Group, the team that they're like the main owners. They've sold a stake to a company called Dynasty, which is a New York-based equity firm. Only been going like 18 months. This firm, I think there's former players with a bit of sort of some big investors that have come in to buy Liverpool. I think they paid about 100 and something million into it. So
yeah.
Quite a big.
It's really interesting. Like we could probably talk for hours on the controversiality of having kind of private equity owning outright certain football teams, or having certain shakes or shares or voting power on certain on the boards of certain football teams. Football is it was a sport. It's now very politicized, and it's now very kind of money oriented and business driven. Yeah, but for me, like, you only have to see kind of Wrexham and like I know Roman Abramovich was kind of forced, or he wanted to sell the club to do whatever he was doing in Ukraine and stuff like that. But like the passion that's gone into owner, supporter owners, if you know what I mean, in the past, it far outweighs, from a fan point of view, the benefit of having a fan owner rather than having a private equity firm.
So you, I know you follow football, but lower down is Scunthorpe United, that have been back-to-back relegated from League Two, and they're now in the Conference North. Mm-hmm. They have this. They're going through a torrid time at the minute, and their owner has sort of been, through his private Facebook, been getting involved with fans in little forums, kicking off on Facebook towards fans and stuff. Multi-millionaire getting involved in these kind of things. Yeah, and he's pulled all funding out of the club. No one got paid on Friday.
Oh wow! Okay.
And they set up a GoFundMe page, and by yesterday dinner time, they had 45 grand in there, which for a club of that stature, it's going to pay everyone for the month, kind of thing. But he's just like fell out with the fans, so he's like, right, well then you're not, there's a lot of complications over who owns the ground and things like this. So now they played at their ground yesterday. They lost, unfortunately, to Buxton 3-0, but they're now got to go play at Gainsborough Trinity for the remainder of the season, because they're not allowed to play at the ground because he's not funding it. So if you, and then people a couple of people have gone, oh, Wrexham, they were fine to get promoted, they've got that money, and it's like, if you want that, that for all said and done, Ryan and Rob are at the games, they go into Wrexham, they go around the changing rooms with the players, they see some of them, the main fans. If you watch the documentary, there's like a following of like younger disabled people that they've done a lot for, and people, they come in there with that money at that level, good.
Yeah. Whereas in contrast, private equity, obviously, it is about the turnover, it is about the finance, it is about the profit. And I don't know whether contractually that they've got to invest a certain amount back into the club, or they've got to do this for the fans, or they've got to do that for the fans. And I know they have fans groups and stuff, but it seems very HR-y, and it seems very like we have to do this just to tick a box, but actually we're going to buy whoever,
Yeah.
and we're gonna buy Liverpool, and we're gonna pump £50 million in, but we're gonna have a return on investment of blah 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 blah. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you want passion from a sport, and secretly that's why I'm happier that a sheikh bought Newcastle, and I'm hoping Jim Radcliffe does buy Man United over another sheikh. But even so, like, passion of football over private equity and
Yes.
business and HRE bullshit for me.
Completely agree. So for Liverpool, on the pitch this weekend, saw quite probably the worst refereeing decisions all season.
Yeah, seen this.
They lost 2-1 to Spurs in the 97th minute.
Own goal.
I know, yeah, quite a belter as well.
It was. Root for the net.
Yeah, so they had an early red card, which I think was a red card. He slipped, his foot's gone over the ball and into Bissouma, and the fact people that's not a red because he slipped and went over the ball. But if you're slipping and going over the ball, you're not in control. Therefore, it's reckless. Therefore, it's a red.
Agree.
The Jota red card, the first yellow wasn't a yellow, so that's a bit harsh. And then you had the goal that was chalked off. Have you seen this?
Yeah, the VAR offside rule thing.
Yeah, they never drew the lines.
Yeah.
So apparently, the VAR thought the on-field decision was offside. So they turned around and said, yeah, stick with your on-field decision. Not realising that the on-field decision... No, sorry. The on-field decision was goal, and then the linesman raised his flag. So they thought the referee had given the offside, not the goal. So they said stick with your on-field decision, thinking they'd given the goal. But because the linesman had his flag up, the referee had given the offside. Yeah. So the referee stuck with his on-field decision, which was the offside. I think that's where the issues come from. But either way, absolutely terrible officiating.
Yes. Speaking of Liverpool, just before we move on to any other results that you've got for us, I know you like to talk about some of the lower leagues.
Yep.
Jordan Henderson.
Yes.
Random curveball topic, I know. So recently he's completed a £12 million transfer to a Saudi team. Don't ask me which one. I don't know.
No.
Reported to be worth £700,000 a week.
Yes.
However, I've got an interesting fact / kind of quiz for you. If you do know the answer, I'll be very pissed off because I found this quite interesting. However, Jordan Henderson has played 7 games so far, scored none, but assisted 4. And there's obviously a big hype around Saudi Arabia and all the football around there and what the people that they're bringing in. Would you like to guess the average attendance at the home games of this specific Saudi Arabian club that Jordan Henderson plays for? The average of the last 7.
So I also think he's there with Sadio Mane. So he's there with some big name players.
Okay.
I bet it's 3,500.
It is, you are overcompensating, sir. It is 976 fans is the average of the last 7 games.
Serious?
They are playing 700k and obviously £12 million and a flat and all that kind of jazz. 976 fans is the average over the last 7 games for Jordan Henderson. But he didn't go for the money, he went to raise awareness.
Yes, which is bullshit. Man City lost to Wolves, dropping the first points of the season. Arsenal win big 4-0. Villa beat Brighton 6-1, giving Brighton their heaviest defeat or the biggest defeat in the Premier League. Championship, West Brom denied Preston top spot, winning away at Preston. And in League 2, Notts County lost 5-4 to Colchester away. Score 4 goals away from home and still lose is quite horrific.
Yeah.
Rugby. So going back into the privately owned equity, etc., Jersey Reds that won the championship last season, they didn't get promoted because their ground didn't meet Premier League regulations to be able to play in the Premiership, not Premier League, in the Premiership. So they didn't get promoted, although they won the league. There were a few games into the Premiership Cup this year, which has incorporated the Premiership and the Championship. And Jersey Reds have folded with immediate effect. on Wednesday, Thursday, which there's always been, I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of the Donny Knights games. I've been to the sort of pre-match meals and with speakers and things. And, they've always said that the money's never filtered down very well. And you've got a team that won the championship last year and have had to fold a few games into this season, thinking that they could have got through, but they just haven't been able to.
Yeah.
And it kind of, that was going to lead me on to the Scunthorpe thing, because you have to have these lower leagues, these lower teams for people to come through. And there's just no funding, nothing. And the gulf between, in rugby, they were trying to increase the Premiership, trying to bring more teams into it, because there's only 10 teams and stuff. So they wanted to bring more into it. But they've got so many regulations and stipulations where grounds have got to be, it's only like 10,000, which, to say that, the Premier League football is regulation minimum 5,000. So the Premiership's 10,000. Teams average less than 10,000 attendance. And these teams can't go up and get the bigger money, but are being relied upon to be there. And you just can't do that.
Yeah.
So, big week in the World Cup. Wales beat Australia on Sunday night 40-6, securing their quarter-final, all but knocking Australia out. Uruguay beat Namibia. Japan beat Samoa in a very tight game, 28-22.
Japan are having a good tournament.
They are. Argentina beat Chile 59-5, and then now Argentina play Japan next weekend, and that is the decider of who comes second in that group. So the winner will qualify for the quarterfinals, which they will play Wales the following Saturday. New Zealand absolutely trounced Italy, 96-17. And I think that had to be the best New Zealand team against the worst Italian team, because that game should have been so much closer. So much closer. Italy pushed France at the Six Nations, only beaten by a few points. France beat New Zealand, so you could see that game being, probably contested within 20-25 points. But they've stuck 79 points on a point difference on them. Scotland beat Romania 84-0, which for the first 20 minutes was 0-0. Romania sort of held their own and pushed Scotland a little bit there. So
Romania not having a good tournament at all.
No, but they're not a top tier team either.
Yeah.
Fiji beat Georgia and Australia beat Portugal to keep their hopes alive on a points different basis. So one more weekend next weekend of the rugby, and then we go into the next stages of the quarterfinals. Cricket. This week, the Men's World Cup, which is a 50-over format, starts. England probably go into that as favourites with sort of Ben Stokes and people like that in the team. You always put yourself in with a good shout. And boxing, Canelo beat Charlo on point quite convincingly. One ref gave him 11 rounds, another gave him, or the other two gave him 10 rounds. So convincingly beat him, and he also put him down in the 7th. But the big one to come out of this week in the boxing news is Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk have signed a contract to fight each other. So they both hold the belts for the heavyweight division. So all of them are on the line. So the winner will be the unified heavyweight world champion. They will hold every heavyweight belt possible. Which, no talk on when the fight will be. Apparently it's going to be in Saudi Arabia, which is a shame, but there's no talks on when or anything like that. So fingers crossed it's pre-Christmas. I can see it happening early December, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, the only benefit to them fighting sort of in the Middle East is time difference is better for us, because I remember when I can't remember, like the Las Vegas fights and stuff like that. You've got to stop until like 5 a.m. UK time.
It's awful. Yeah.
I mean, kind of like the undercard will be starting at 3 p.m., 4 p.m., which is probably not great. But then
main fight.
But then you main fight would be 9-10 o'clock, which would be cool.
So I was going to ask you. So we nearly saw the biggest comeback in Ryder Cup history. Huge comeback. What's been probably, in your eyes, the biggest comeback and your favourite comeback in sport history?
Oh my God, you put me on the spot.
Massively. You'll go away and you'll think of one, but off the top of your head.
I have no idea. I'll have to come back to you.
So for me, I think.
What do you think? What do you?
I think the greatest comeback has to be Liverpool versus AC Milan in the Champions League final. AC Milan were 3-0 up at half time. Liverpool came back, scored 3 goals in the second half, went to penalties, and won on penalties. And there's just part of me that they came out. Gerrard scored an early header, gets everyone going, and then I think Didi Hamann scored, and it was just that fairy tale. And I'm not, I'm very anti-Liverpool, and it was just the perfect way to do it. And there's been like Barcelona came back against PSG in the quarterfinals, stuff like that over 2 legs. But this was one game, 3-0 down, Champions League final, everything on the line. For me, that's the greatest comeback. My favourite comeback was the Ryder Cup a few years ago in America.
I was going to say Miracle.
Yeah, that's my favourite. That everything was just going the right way. That's probably my favourite. Any of them refresh your memory?
Not particularly. I mean, I've watched Barcelona kind of, but I can't remember. You've thrown me completely off. But like Barcelona versus PSG, it was like a Champions League group game or something like that. Where they play home and away, and it was the second leg, and Barca was like 4-0 down or something, and they won the second leg 6-1, and they ended up putting through. And it was
I think it was like the quarter. Was the quarterfinal, semi-final.
Yeah. It was the team that had Messi in the middle, Neymar on the left, and Suarez on the right.
Yeah.
And I remember it was like a 95th minute winner or something that put them over the edge and put them through to the next round or something like that. I remember watching that. God, I don't even know when that was, but I do. I remember watching that. So
yeah,
I'm going to say that, but maybe I'll come back to you next week.
Yeah, have a think. It's just that with the USA one, I just kind of they nearly did it, and I just you've got there was a fight. I can't remember who he was fighting. Carl Froch many years ago in his first USA fight. He'd been put down. He'd been bashed up for 11 and a half rounds, and then there's about 30 seconds left on the clock, and he connects and he knocks his opponent out. And when you watch the fight back, or you just watch the highlights, however you want to watch it, he's been battered for 11 and a half rounds, and then at the end of the 12th round, he lets off a flurry of punches and just knocks his opponent out and wins the fight on a knockout.
Yeah,
that's a good fight. I like Carl Froch. He did it with Kessler. He lost the first fight and he went back and avenged it and won the second fight. That was a good comeback. But in terms of like greatest comebacks, I think there'll be a couple of years ago, there was one in the Super Bowl. There was a team down. I think it was like 31-3 at half time, something silly like that. And they came back and put like 40 points on the board unanswered. In a Super Bowl final. I always think in a final, that's the clutch moments. That's when you've got to.
I think like it kind of is a comeback, kind of isn't a comeback. I mean, like I remember watching and I remember you always remember when you got goosebumps. So like when Man City went up against QPR to win the Premier League, and that famous Aguero, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like it kind of was a comeback, kind of wasn't a comeback. I mean, they were behind and they needed a goal, and Man United have all but won it. And in the 90 whatever of minute, Aguero scored and took his top off, and that was it. That was Man City off on an absolute run that obviously still continues to this day. And you've got Wolves when Deeney, when they saved the penalty and Deeney went up the other end and scored.
Yeah.
Like those kind of like what the fuck moments. What am I actually watching here? Like
So
the backs are against the wall and almost
that year with Troy Deeney, when he did that, the same year, Doncaster Rovers had the same with Brentford, and I think it was Jamie Hayter that went up the other end, and might have even been Cops that went up the other end and scored in the semi-final of the playoffs to reach the final. And obviously Deeney did it the following week for Watford, so it was like no one remembers the Donny one, but it happened exactly the same way. He saved a penalty, went up the other end, scored, and then you fast forward 10 years, maybe 12 years, and Brentford are in the Premier League and Donny are bottom 5 of League 2. The NFL one, it was 2017, Atlanta Falcons against New England Patriots. The Falcons were up 28-3 going into the fourth quarter. And then it finished 28-28 at the end of the game. And then Patriots won in overtime, 34-28. So it was actually the fourth quarter that all that happened in. So that was up there. That's probably the biggest ever NFL comeback.
Yeah. I mean, did Tiger Woods not win the Master after all his time out and controversy?
He did.
Like, if you're talking about comebacks, is it specifically in that game? Like, you go into halftime 6-0 down and you win 7-6. But
yeah,
like in terms of comebacks, like he spent something ridiculous, like 680 odd weeks at number one, world number one, and then had an unbelievable fall from grace. He had obviously massive injury, massive personal problems, drinking problems, and then came back and then won a Masters as if nothing had happened.
Yeah, 2019, and took it tight as well. And that year, the sort of top 10 of that tournament as well: Tiger Woods, Alexander Schauffele, Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Webb Simpson, Molinari that has won majors since, Jason Day, Tony Finau, John Rahm, Ricky Fowler. There wasn't a big, every name up there was standout players. So to come back from everything that he did, back surgery, that car crash that he had, everything that went on around his private life, he's done phenomenal.
Yeah.
So not a problem. Well, I will catch you next week, and we'll have more around the world of football and rugby. There'll be a Formula One race on. Yeah. So
I always miss it when it's not on, but then I kind of feel like I get my Sundays, like I get to do whatever I want on a Sunday and not be tied down to the television at certain times. But we're in Qatar next week, so 6 p.m.'s the race, so we may not catch it on the pod. But it's better because you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get some F1, but then you also
get the results the following week. Yeah. Yeah. So, no, well, all the best, and I will catch you next week.
Take care.
See you later.